To start us off, we have Shekar from Orbyt. He started his business. We heard about him first at our pitch night back in February. It was a kind of a virtual business card. So we're going to learn about some of his progress over the last 6 months.
Thanks, Avi, for the introduction, and thanks to Venture Cafe for having me. I really appreciate it. So my name is Shekar. I'm a rising senior at Brown University studying computer science, and today I'll be talking about Orbyt. So imagine you're at a networking event and you meet a few people that you feel like are interesting and you want to develop a relationship with, or you're meeting people over Zoom, especially in today's world. You talk to them for like 10, 15 minutes, and at the end you want to exchange contact information. How does that happen? Typically, you could exchange business cards. This is quite inefficient and you're prone to lose them. Sometimes you may even say, hey, why don't you take my phone and why don't you put your phone number and your name in it? Or why don't you just tell me your name? If your name is anything like mine, super hard to spell, this is a dreadful experience because my name does not sound how it's spelled. My last name is impossibly long. So this is an issue, and it becomes very hard to track because you end up at the end of the day with a bunch of business cards or a bunch of people in your phone. You're not really sure who you met when, like what you guys talked about, and it just becomes very impersonal, the entire experience. But there's a deeper story here. Each person that you met, whether it be Fred, Sophie, or Holly, you all talked about something. Each person that you met had their own story. And ideally, you can send some sort of personalized follow-up or remember the context in which you had this conversation. For example, if you met Sophie and she had a friend actually that works at Venture Cafe San Francisco, the next time you're in San Francisco, you want to reach out to her because you love Venture Cafe. Or you meet Holly and she has a pit bull named Rocco and you also have a pit bull and you want to connect over a mutually shared experience. If you end up looking at all these business cards at the end of the day, you're like, you don't really remember who's who, and it's hard to attach the context of the person to the person themselves. And at the end of the day, your network just starts becoming larger and larger over time and almost unmanageable. You're meeting lots of people every week or every month. And as your network gets larger, it's hard to remember who to prioritize when. Everyone's busy, so if you send a follow-up email, you may not get a response. And you also have to remember to re-follow up with them. And this is annoying, right? Because networking shouldn't be your full-time job. Everyone understands that it's part of the business, but you really can't be spending 6 hours every Saturday manually updating some spreadsheet or putting this information into your phone, because that's just not what you want to do. I mean, networking shouldn't be anyone's full-time job. So as I thought about these problems, I arrived at a few key insights. And from there, we decided to build the product Orbyt. The first one is we defined what networking should be. And as I mentioned earlier, it shouldn't be some mundane task or having to go to a networking event every night in order to just get more and more business cards or add more people on LinkedIn. That doesn't actually develop a meaningful relationship. Ideally, networking is a product of a few interactions or a few actions every day that end up building towards a stronger network overall. We also wanted to build a tool that actually works for you. Think about LinkedIn. Sure, it's great for looking up people, but in order to actually, maintain connection with your network, 40% of the feed is ads. How is that working for you? We want to develop a tool that's essentially focused on you and your network. We also wanted to capture the entire contact pipeline. And what that means is when you meet someone and you grab their business card, it's up to you to scan this person into your own personal relationship management system, or put it into a spreadsheet, or keep track of it somehow. Why are these all separate tools? There should be one tool or one product that essentially captures this entire pipeline so that it's a very streamlined process. And no matter where or when you meet someone, it's all in one place. So the first thing we started off with was building digital business cards. And the process behind it is pretty intuitive. You can create a bunch of different cards, and you can see mine right here. We have work, social, and startup. And to share with someone your card, who when you both have Orbyt, it's as simple as just clicking the card and showing the QR code. You guys can both scan it, and you each have each other's contact information. Additionally, say I graduate next year, Brown CS21, and I shared my work card. And I update it. I'm going to go full-time on Orbyt. When I update this bio, everyone else who I've already scanned and have a contact with will automatically get this updated information. We call this business card a live card because everyone will always be up to date with whatever you're doing, or even if you change email addresses, that will always be reflected in the business card that they have of you. Typically, though, you may want to think about exchanging information with non-Orbyt users. You know, that's the reality of the situation. That's likely going to be happening the most, especially in the beginning. So the same person that has Orbyt can share their card with people that don't have Orbyt. They can just scan the QR code and it'll open in a web view. And they can still go through essentially the same flow. They can say, you know, Shekar Ramaswamy, share their contact information with you, and they can enter a quick form of information. So that way there's a two-way flow of information, even when only one person has Orbyt. Going down the contact pipeline, you've exchanged information, but now what? Ideally, there's a central place to track all of this information. So we've added core relationship management features, such as tags, so that you can easily organize your contacts by management, finance, tech, etc. We also have notes and reminders. So say you just had a meeting with Amanda and you want to remember what you guys talked about, or you want to set a follow-up with her. That all comes in one place. We call this the side panel. And what this means is you have your entire interaction history with Amanda in one place, so that the next time you're going to meet with her or you need a quick refresher on what she does, you'll have all this interaction history, whether it be emails, news articles that her company is tagged in or she herself is in, reminders, notes, etc. All this is in one place instead of having it spread out over spreadsheets and LinkedIn, etc. We also provide a robust search over everyone in your contacts. So say I'm looking for Parlet Ventures. Ted Hoffman works there, but I'm not entirely sure what Parlet Ventures does or what their latest investments are. We scrape the latest data on all these companies so that even when you're searching Parlet Ventures, not only do you see Ted Hoffman, you also see a refresher of what Parlet Ventures does, which is important to us because you want to see informed, you want to see him informed going into the meeting. And of course, you can see everyone else that works at Parlet Ventures, as well as when you click on Ted Hoffman, you'll be able to see your full interaction history with them. We also have a bunch of smart assistant features, and this is kind of the secret sauce driving what differentiates Orbyt. First of all, we're able to generate smart follow-ups. And what that means is we're automatically able to identify contacts that you may be interested in or contacts that you're losing touch of. Say you had a few reminders with Jim a month ago and you never really completed them, or you had some notes to follow up and that never happened. You know, everyone's busy. We've all experienced this. People fall through the cracks. Orbyt can automatically detect when you're falling out of touch with people and will automatically slightly nudge you to make sure you're staying on the right track in terms of your networking goals. We also offer a feature called Contacts in the News, where we're able to generate and tag the latest articles from around the web that your contacts are interested in, whether it be the companies that they're involved in or they themselves are mentioned. We also offer a robust calendar integration, and that means however many calendars you choose to connect, these are all piped in to the same contact side panel so that you always have an up-to-date interaction history of that person. We will also notify you after calendar events, and you can customize this and the notification settings to be so to have after a calendar event, you can be sure to follow up or be sure to write some notes about your meeting so that you're always up to date. We also offer additional features, such as a daily email digest. And that means we don't expect you to open Orbyt every day. Everybody's busy. So instead, we'll send you a daily email with the reminders for that day or the relevant news articles for that day. So that way, it comes to your email in a digestible format. You can take action and you've done your job. You've done your networking goals for the day. A classic problem with these type of systems is the cold start problem, meaning as soon as you switch systems, you have no contacts. You essentially have to build up your network from scratch again. We provide integrations with LinkedIn, Google, and mobile contacts, more coming soon, where we're able to scrape all your LinkedIn contacts, put your Google contacts into the service. So we've automatically filled your personal relationship management system with a lot of the contacts and data that you already have to make sure you hit the ground running. We also offer a personalized service to transfer over your existing relationship management software if you're using a spreadsheet or an Airtable and it doesn't really fit well with a programmatic approach. Well, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for listening. Feel free to sign up for our waitlist at orbyt.cc. My name is Shekar. You can always email me at shekar@orbyt.cc with any questions or comments. And thank you again to Venture Cafe for the opportunity.
Awesome, Shekar. And as someone who saw a little bit about what you're building out, what you had 6 months ago, it's great to see some more integrations and some more development. So I'm saving my questions for later. So next we have Diana Perkins. She is the CEO of LapSnap. They're a product design firm producing a shopping bag for wheelchair users. And she will go more in depth about this right now. Thanks for joining us, Diana.
Thank you, Avi. Good morning, everyone. I'm Diana Perkins. I'm the co-founder and CEO of LapSnap. We're a Rhode Island-based product design company with the goal of creating products that empower individuals with disabilities around the world. So disabled populations of all types face many challenges when navigating the built environment. But surprisingly, wheelchair users cite shopping as the #1 most difficult aspect of their day-to-day lives. Displays can make the aisles too narrow, items can be placed on shelves too high or too low to be reached, and the doors on freezers make the frozen section extra difficult. Most of them get a spouse, child, or caretaker to do it for them, but this limits their independence. Given that there are 6 million Americans who use a wheelchair, you would be shocked at how difficult it is for many wheelchair users to go shopping for groceries and other essentials on their own. You might be thinking, what about those electric shopping carts I always see in the store? But motorized shopping carts require a user to transfer themselves out of their personal chair and into the cart, which many people just can't do by themselves. And it requires them to leave their personal chair unattended at the front of the shop. But what about those plastic hand baskets every grocery store has? Couldn't they just put one on their lap? While many wheelchair users are currently forced to rely on this method, they have to hold the basket while also maneuvering their chair. So it's really easy for their groceries to just fall off. With these issues in mind, we created our flagship product, the LapSnap, the world's only shopping basket designed with and for wheelchair users. It's a bag with a versatile attachment mechanism that allows you to carry items hands-free. With the LapSnap, we aim to help wheelchair users increase their independence by enabling them to do more tasks by themselves, including shopping, doing laundry, gardening, household chores, or even apple picking. I even spoke to one woman who has 6 tiny dogs she wants to carry around in her LapSnap. The LapSnap's versatile elastic strap allows the user to wear it in a variety of comfortable ways, including behind their back, under their legs, or through the arms of their chair. Unfortunately, many products for wheelchair users are model specific, so they can only be used by people who use a specific brand or type of chair. One of our biggest goals was to make the LapSnap as universally designed as possible, so we decided to make the attachment body-based instead of chair-based, so anyone can use it. Our collapsing mechanism allows the bag to have a rigid frame when in use, and collapse easily for storage and transportation. And the strap can also be used to keep the bag closed while not in use. A long pouch across the front of the bag allows both right and left-handed users to easily access a grabber, which can be used to extend their reach so they can get items on the higher shelves or off the floor. On the side closest to the user, there's another pocket for personal items, such as a phone, wallet, and keys. I'm so sorry, I'm not sure what's happening. Several other ergonomic considerations that make the LapSnap comfortable and effective are the result of user testing. While regular plastic hand baskets can leave deep marks on the skin, the LapSnap has a layer of foam underneath its base to avoid creating pressure sores. The reinforced handles make it easy to lift the basket onto the checkout counter or into your car. And we also made the side of the frame closest to the user out of a flexible nylon rod. So when you bend forward to get something off of a shelf or place an item in your bag, the extra give in the frame helps you from hurting yourself. The rest of the frame is metal to give the bag a rigid structure for security. One of the cornerstones of our business is working with the people we're designing for. On the left is Sarah Skeels, the woman who inspired this project. I took her course on the history of disability justice one year, and the following year, I TA'd her class while taking my engineering capstone where the LapSnap was born. We also worked closely with Tina Gwinnett Pedersen. She's the founder of a local disability advocacy organization called RAMP, which stands for Real Access Motivates Progress. Both Tina and Sarah met with us throughout our product development phase to help us refine our ideas and test our product. And we're proud to be working with RAMP and with veterans through the VA hospital to continue getting user feedback throughout our process. Veterans make up a large portion of wheelchair users in the US, so getting their input is very important to us. We are also completely American made, so we can ensure the quality of our product and the conditions under which it's being produced. Before the LapSnap, both Tina and Sarah avoided shopping because of the unnecessary difficulties. But when using our prototype, they felt really comfortable shopping on their own. This is really when LapSnap started. We were initially working on this project for class, just to get experience with all the stages of designing a product, from brainstorming to user interviews to prototyping. But once we started showing it to people, we immediately got this overwhelmingly positive feedback. I believe Tina's exact words were, "Hurry up and make me one." Seeing how much easier even our basic prototypes made their shopping experience and how excited they were about the product made us realize we couldn't stop just because the semester was ending. The LapSnap needed to exist. That's when we transitioned from just a school project to an actual business. Getting to learn about the whole startup process through great resources like the Venture Cafe has really made this whole thing possible. We got involved with the Nelson Center for Entrepreneurship at Brown to help us figure out all the things we needed to do, and now we're participating in the Rhode Island chapter of the Mass Challenge Startup Accelerator. Over the summer, we've been refining our business strategy, conducting dozens of virtual user interviews, and we just filed a provisional patent. Right now, we're working on producing a prototype run to send to people for extended user testing to make sure the product is the best that it can be. We'll incorporate their feedback as we move into manufacturing, and we will plan to start taking pre-orders on our website soon. Towards the end of the year, we'll begin developing our next product, a smaller model of the LapSnap for kids to use at school or around the house, and for those who use a walker instead of a wheelchair. I graduated from Brown University with degrees in mechanical engineering and industrial design, and I have experience in the field of product design for disabled populations. I originally got interested in this area through working with the American Printing House for the Blind, who create thousands of educational aids for blind and visually impaired children. Chloe, our CFO, studied engineering and economics, so she has the business and technical skills to make sure the product works and the business is financially viable. And our COO, Hannah, just received her master's in teaching science, and she has experience of the co-founder of a nonprofit startup. So our team is exceptionally well suited to bring this business to life. Right now, our biggest challenge is supply chain management. We recently secured a manufacturer who can produce the metal component of our bag, but we're having more difficulty sourcing the soft goods and plastic components. Much of our target market lives on fixed income from government disability benefits, so we're really focused on keeping costs low. After we get feedback from our prototype round, we're planning to crowdfund to pay for the first full run of the product. The LapSnap is the first of many products we hope to create. If you're interested in connecting with us, you can email us at thelapsnap@gmail.com or check out our website, thelapsnap.com. We would love to hear from you and figure out together how you can help us make the world more accessible for everyone.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Diana. Before we move on to Brian, I just want to say, don't remind us to connect you with Polaris MEP if you haven't yet. They're so connected in the textile space and the manufacturing space, so could probably give you some insight, support, maybe even connect you with some local folks. Great. Well, again, we'll follow up in a few minutes, but next we're going to hear from Brian Morley, the founder of Emerge Health Rhode Island. They're a marketing consulting firm supporting innovation in life sciences and med tech. So a little different perspective here, but excited to hear what you've been up to and how you're growing your business.
Sure, thank you, Avi and the Venture Cafe. So I don't have any slides to share, but is it okay? Are we just going to stay in this kind of the tile or the speaker view, I guess?
That's awesome, Brian. And I would also bring up like where you came from.
Of course.
Which I'm sure you're going to, right?
Maybe. So I just really want to kind of share my story, if that's okay. So back in February, March of this year, I actually got laid off by Johnson & Johnson. And I was there for roughly 14, 15 years in driving some of the orthopedic products. So working in the med device, med tech sector. And, you know, but instead of just kind of jumping to the next thing, I really thought about, you know, what is my mission statement? What fulfills me and why? And, you know, I know that part of me, I want to change people's lives. I want to be able to move the needle in a healthcare perspective. And that was a huge part of why I was a part of Johnson & Johnson and other companies before that, is because I love being able to change people's lives, no matter how small or how large I can do that. So that was a very important part of me. But what was missing, which I think was another part of me and kind of who I am based off of my upbringing, was I always wanted to have a deep connection to my community. So I took, a week or so to just think about, is there a way that I can somehow leverage my skills and attributes from a professional perspective, everything that I've grown professionally, but also be able to apply that to be able to hit that personal mission of being connected to the community that I'm a part of. And I moved up to Providence about 8 years ago as part of the largest acquisition in orthopedics when J&J bought this company, Synthes. I think it was $22 billion with a B cash, right? It's a huge acquisition. That's when I moved up here about 8 years ago. And the reason I moved up here is because I fell in love with Providence. I fell in love with this area. It has a huge, deep-rooted culture. There's tons of creative people, tons of extremely intelligent people, top-notch education institution, top-notch organizations. J&J is right down the street, Boston Scientific's right down the street, Boston and New York are right in between. So we're kind of in this epicenter of extreme talent and extreme culture. And it was kind of a melting pot culture as well. I found that there was lots of folks that I met were from all over the place that came here. And that was, we just walked away. We just had a talk about diversity and inclusion. I was like, this is one of the most diverse places I've been to, because everyone kind of comes in from another area with different perspectives. So anyways, I saw this, I fell in love with the culture. I said, I want to be a part of this. This jives with my style. I love creatives. I love different thinkers. But now, can I also be a part of this community in a meaningful way? And that, once again, took me to that February, March timeframe. And I spoke to a previous colleague of mine. He said, you got to come down and check out what's going on in Providence. And I live about 5 miles from here, but I had no idea kind of what was going on in this area with regards to kind of this startup ecosystem, this healthcare initiative, because I was so focused on driving my business at J&J, which was a national business, right? I was running product marketing for our spine organization, for a segment of that organization, supporting 600 sales reps across the nation, thousands of surgeons. That's where my lens was. It was not what's under my nose. So took that step, talked to my colleague. He connected me to a couple of these, I would say, kind of decision makers and influencers around this initiative, Toonie, you being one of them, to kind of get a better understanding of what's going on here, and is there a place that I fit? Do my skills and my attributes, is there value that I can create here? And after talking to some of these folks and realizing that there is this organized effort, there is the startup kind of at the education level, at the university level, there's organized initiatives above that, and then the state's kind of overseeing and driving the whole thing. I had no idea any of that existed. And once I found that existed, I started to speak with the folks that are making this move, told them about myself and my skill set, and they said, oh yeah, we've been looking for someone like you for a while. So, that was flattering, number one, and it jived with this mission. I said, man, if I can take my skills, my attributes, and apply it to my community, I'm filling all my cups, right? I'm filling all my buckets, and I will be very satisfied across the board. So that was the kind of aha moment, this opportunity. And then I thought about it and kind of did some market analysis, once again, had some more conversations, and decided that I'm going to stand up a consulting firm. And my background, I think I touched on it a little bit, is I was product marketing for med tech, med device, and healthcare, working for J&J. Well, there's this huge initiative for healthcare startups, right? There's NEMIC, that is the med tech incubator. There's RIHub, who's a group of high horsepower advisors that's driving accelerations for startups. Then we have the Venture Cafe. We have the CIC, the brick and mortar right here. There's connections to the universities and the healthcare system. That's all right here. And I was blown away by that. That was number one. All the resources are there. Number two, every person that I talked to answered, or every person that I emailed or reached out on LinkedIn answered my phone call. We got on a Zoom, we chatted, we touched and continued that network. One of the things that I found that I am, I like to be a connector of dots, right? But I didn't know all the dots in this network. I quickly found out a lot of the dots, and I started making those connections for myself. And then that's actually part of what I'm doing now as part of my consulting firm, is making those connections for folks like yourself that are on the line. My skill set, though, is understanding the market strategy and commercial execution and all the connective tissue in between. I think what makes kind of my skill and my attributes unique is some folks are very strong at strategy, right? They can see an opportunity, they can see a problem, they can lay out a plan to solve it, but they can't always execute on that plan. And then other folks are like, I can take that strategy, you give me the equation to solve the problem, I'll go solve it and I'll crank on it and solve it. What I can do is I can do the whole thing, the whole spectrum of the strategy and the execution, and then ensure everything's aligned. Because what we find is that a lot of folks in the startup community, strong technical background, medical backgrounds, things like that, they might not have that strategy component. They have an idea, but not how do I bring this kind of plan to life? Or they say, I can get it to the sales folks, and here's my value proposition, and here's how we're going to push it. But there's a lot in between that gets overlooked, and that's where I can kind of come in and help close those gaps. And for those of you that have pitched, a lot of the times you'll probably, your heads should start nodding when you pitch your idea. I have this brilliant idea, everyone's going to love it, and then it's in their hands. Well, how'd you get there, right? Why are they going to change their behaviors and beliefs? How are you going to get that into the sales force's hands? Like, what are your metrics? What are your key performance indicators? All those things, that's the questions that you're going to get from these kind of venture capitalists and the angel investment groups. How are you going to do it, and why are you going to change the standard of care? That's where I can come in and help, right? Build all that connective tissue. So, so far in the past, I started this up about 4 months ago. I'm now an advisor for RIHub, one of the kind of organizations that are driving this initiative. I'm a market strategist advisor for NEMIC, also a part of the advisory team for Rhode Island Bio. So those are kind of the 3 major funnels that are driving this initiative, and I'm part of all 3 of those. And then connecting with startups to help drive their initiative, right? Help either build that front end strategy, help launch that strategy, or help make those connections if I'm not the right person to do that, so that everything is efficient and effective and you guys hit your goals the way you want to.
Fantastic, Brian. And actually it's a great launching point for the next phase of this conversation, which is this discussion we'll have between us. I have one question I'm going to ask, but I want to say to everyone else, throw your questions in the chat, or pipe up when there's a pause. Let's say that too, because we want to hear from you. And this is a 35 or so people. It's small enough we can accept your voice. We want to hear from you as well. So and it can be anything from hearing more about the individual businesses or the ecosystem itself. But Brian, I think you touched upon something about your support for getting people from this idea to the actual market, this gap here. And I'm thinking about Shekar and Diana and how you both have products that are still in the development phase, are still in some kind of product testing. And so I'm curious to ask about how, especially Shekar and Diana, you're thinking about your MVP. When is your product going to be ready for market? When are you going to make that decision to flip? When is it good enough, knowing that you'll always make iterations? And then to Brian, how are you coaching others on that decision-making process and still creating a customer base, even if there isn't a product in their hands yet?
Sure, I can go. So yeah, that's a great question. That's definitely something that we think about almost every day. So the first thing that we're trying to do is, I have some experience building products in the past, not Orbyt, but some other social media-ish platforms. And I think one of the biggest takeaways I took from that is the fact that you need to get feedback as early as possible. So one of the biggest things I preach to my team is, let's make sure we get the very bare minimum done. Like, let's get at least the components in place and start showing users. Does the flow make sense? Sure, colors may not be aligned. Sure, the exact text may not be correct. But if you're able to start with a minimal MVP and get feedback and really measure usage, one of my big hypotheses is that if a user will use the product even when it looks terrible and the general functionality is in place, of course they'll use it when it looks much nicer. But it's important to make sure that the core product and the core idea is validated up front so that you don't spend a bunch of work polishing and making sure the colors are aligned when you don't actually have a substantive product. So what we're doing is we have a wait list now, and that's part of our initiative. Like, we just started building this a few months ago as like these additional features, but we have a wait list. We're bringing people on in our beta just so we can get as much feedback as possible early.
Yeah, for me, with a hardware product, it's really important, I think, to have prototypes, physical prototypes that test at least one assumption that you're working on. So I didn't go to people with the full finished prototype that my partners and I spent, 20 hours learning how to sew. We went to them first with, one that was made out of cardboard, one that was made out of foam cord, and we moved to one that was made out of like really cheap fabric scraps that we could find easily. And each prototype would just test one feature or one assumption that we had about how the product would work. And we said, okay, how do you like this feature? Grid? Okay, now let's take you to the second prototype. How do you like this? What do you like better? What do you like worse? But I think ideally you're always improving. I think at some point you do just have to kind of say, okay, this is what I'm done for the moment, and I'm going to do, prototype 1 is going to manufacturing, and then eventually there'll be a V2 LapSnap, so yeah, we're hoping to do that pretty soon.
And from my perspective, it's asking the right questions to yourself, to your team, and then maybe to the customer. And it's, and being as objective in your answers as possible. And the hardest thing, I think, for anybody is to be objective in about themselves, and that includes your business, right? We're subjective, right? We like to see things through our own lens. I'm the same way, right? So I think it's knowing what questions that you need to ask and continue to ask on a regular basis. What problem am I solving, right? How different is this than what's on the market today? Is it noticeably different? Is it iteratively different? And am I trying to create a problem that needs to be solved, or is to fulfill my own great idea, or am I truly solving a problem, right? So those are questions that you need to kind of continue to ask yourself. What's the problem that I'm solving? How am I doing it? How is it different than what's out there today? And then when you start to kind of roll that out, I think what Diana was saying, getting that customer feedback, are the customers answering it the same way you are? And if they are, then you're on the right track, right? But if they're not, there's something malaligned, right? And that's where strategy and execution need to be lined up. That's where you have a disjointed situation. The other thing I think it's really important is make sure you have the right set of advisors, because once again, it's really hard to think objectively, right? But you have to have those trusted advisors that will give you an objective answer and tell you when you might be going off course, or there might be an opportunity to accelerate because you're not thinking of it a certain way, right? So have those advisors, and what they can do is help address your blind spots. We all have blind spots, right? We don't like to admit it. We do, once again, myself included. So have those people that can help you close your blind spots and address those opportunities that either might be flying by you or the problems that you're not thinking about. So that to me is kind of like the front end work that you need to do to make sure that you're on the right track. If any of those things kind of go off sideways, then you might have to stop and rethink, what am I doing and why am I doing it? So those are kind of the front end things. What's the problem I'm solving? Does this thing actually work, right? That's always a question that you gotta answer. And then, yeah, getting that stakeholder feedback and the customer feedback is really key on the front end. Setting those expectations, asking the right questions, engaging the right folks, and making a decision quickly on, is this the right segment of the market that I need to be going after? Does my value proposition ring true? Is it really doing what I think it's doing? And if not, kind of go back to the drawing board and kind of rework those things. Those are kind of the things that I think about.
And that leads into a question we got. This is a crazy time to be starting a business. In some ways, it's an opportune time, right? But also, in many ways, we're stuck in our homes. Shekar is in California, for better or worse. Maybe he gets to go surfing. But if you're not, but I think Diana pointed this out, it's harder to do testing. It's harder to connect with potential customers. There aren't in-person networking events to test out a virtual business card platform. So I guess, how are you all navigating this time right now?
Avi, I have to give a shout out to Shekar because he's using me as one of his early advisors. And last month we had a session?
Yep.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that? And I love that this guy also, his mom is a dentist in Cupertino, right?
Yep.
And he helped her with her digital transformation. So bravo.
Awesome.
You're a good son.
Yeah. So in terms of getting feedback early and relying on advisors and reaching out, I think, at least in my experience, I've just been doing as much as I can to rely on my existing network. I really don't think I've made significant new advisors or headway by way of meeting new people in these past few months. And that's maybe something I should be improving on and being more proactive in reaching out to people. But I think, the set of advisors that we have right now have been able to provide really good feedback and help us iterate on the product. Because as Brian said, there are some things I just never even considered that these advisors have been bringing up. And it's something that is really useful. Like, for example, Toonie brought up the idea of, voice integration, like being super important on mobile, especially when you're on the go and you just had a meeting with someone, you want to just be able to speak into your phone and record these notes as opposed to, sitting down, making sure you type it in. So yeah, to that point, advisors are super important, and we've definitely been relying on our existing network, and we're looking for ways to expand it. That's definitely a work in progress.
Yeah, I think advisors are a huge part of it. I just finished the Brown Entrepreneurship Accelerator, and I'm doing now the Mass Challenge Accelerator. And so through that, I've gotten a lot of great new advisors who have been able to help me think about different parts of the business. But with regards to, testing it, I originally was doing every user test, in person in a grocery store with an individual, which right now is obviously not possible. And so I've been doing a lot of Zoom interviews, but I obviously want people to be able to actually use the product before I go to manufacturing. So that's why I'm working on this this prototype run to send out to people who I've been talking to and have them give me extended feedback.
Yeah, and for me, my situation is a little different, right? I don't have a physical product to hold, right? I'm a consultancy. So at the end of the day, where I add value is spending time with the innovators like Diana and Shekar, and spending that time and going deep and kind of really understanding the business plan, what they're trying to do, why they're trying to do it, how they're trying to get there. So for me, luckily as a consultant, it didn't really impact my ability to reach and perform at the level that I need to. The hardest part for me was the world shut down, and all of a sudden, schools closed, and I had 3 kids running around, and we had to send our nanny back. And the hardest part for me was just how do you maintain a strong core household and launch a business? That's been the biggest challenge for me. But it's allowed me to kind of do it at a pace where I'm not going too far over my skis and gonna just tumble. So I've done it at like an appropriate pace, and learn as I learn about being an entrepreneur. I'm not an entrepreneur, not a serial entrepreneur. I have the bug, but I'm learning that capability while I'm delivering the value of my kind of skills and attributes at the same time.
Thanks. Awesome.
Avi, I just want to say, Brian, you impressed me so much because you really, you're walking your talk. You show up at like our Growth Lab series, like our Insperity series. You keep showing up because you just said, you know what you're really great at, and you know where your weak spots are, and you're continuing to develop those as a new entrepreneur, right? And and I really appreciate that you became a mentor with our RIHub VMS program. So you're constantly, I just love using you as an example because I often use athletes as an example, right?
Yeah.
Top athletes always have coaches. And I don't think entrepreneurs think that same way all the time, but we have so many resources in the state that that it's great to see our ecosystem really coming together, and to see someone like you start your business after having a career that is on every level. I'm just giving you a high five.
Yeah,
Much love right back to you, Toonie, the godmother.
I'd love to dive a little deeper into that. And here, we have a product design firm, we have a tech product, we're talking about, med tech devices. What makes this environment, unique for you that it makes it worth starting and running a business here?
So I think, oh, sorry, go ahead, Diana.
Oh, okay. I think one of the biggest things for me is how many young people there are in the state. We have such a huge number of universities around, and I think college age students are one of the biggest groups that entrepreneurship is kind of pitched to, and it's kind of on their minds a lot. And so I have been having huge success finding people to help me out, interns to do various tasks and stuff, just from people in the area who are excited. There's also a ton of more official resources like the Venture Cafe, like the Nelson Entrepreneurship Center, like Rye Hub, like the Social Enterprise Greenhouse, all these kind of corporations and businesses that focus so highly on entrepreneurship. I think it's really created a really nice ecosystem of people to have ideas and then implement them.
Yeah, in my perspective, why am I standing this up? I feel like I am one of the building blocks. This initiative started several years ago, but someone saw this opportunity, and these things started kind of getting stood up, right? So that we have people with clinical expertise, regulatory expertise, sales expertise, understand how to get through the FDA. We have product development, project management, all of this exists right here. And I'm just one of the building blocks to add to this capability. So I'm happy about that. So when I saw, I was like, for example, a surgeon that I've known through the grapevine found out that I was standing this up and called me up and said, hey, I have IP on a product. And I said, well, we have everything you need right here. If you want to turn this into a viable medical device, we have all the dots, and I can connect you to them, and we can, if you want it, we can make it happen here. If you think about Zymedica right down the road from product development, and there's a fair amount just on the other side of the border in Massachusetts. You think about J&J and Boston Scientific. You can reach anything you want from here, which that's why I stood this up, because I knew I had access to everything that I needed.
Yeah, and to Diana's point, there's so many young people interested in entrepreneurship. All my co-founders and our head designer are from Brown and RISD, which is great. And we've always had a bunch of students always willing to try out our product and give us tons of feedback. And they've been really great about that. And additionally, Brown's been investing a lot in entrepreneurship. I remember when I first arrived as a freshman, there was no Nelson Center. There was no certificate of entrepreneurship. I'd never heard of the Venture Cafe. But now I'm going to be a senior, and there's a whole new building dedicated to entrepreneurship. I just took a class last semester with Jonas Clark in the Nelson Center about how to think about your business, how to scale it. And now, of course, the Venture Cafe has popped up, and there are tons of other resources made available, which has really, I feel like, helped entrepreneurs, not only people coming into college already knowing they want to start a business, but also people that may not necessarily have been exposed to what entrepreneurship is or how they can make an impact. The entirety of the Rhode Island community, and Providence in particular, is doing a great job of making sure everyone feels included and providing people with the ample resources to start a business in whatever capacity that may be.
If I could add on Shekar, you mentioned the word scale, and I think that's the key thing, because if you're successful, and I think you guys are going to be successful, and a lot of the folks on, you're going to have to scale, and that's when you go from being an entrepreneur to being a business. You're running a business, right? So, and then you have to decide, do you get out of that and go back to the fun stuff of being the entrepreneur, or do you scale your business and grow it? The nice thing about here is, once again, we have a ton of talent. So if we needed to pull from the area to put your C-suite together as you scale, whether it's the CEOs, the CFOs, CMOs, wink, wink, and other folks like that, to actually scale your business and drive that growth so you are a $30 million or a $100 million business, once again, you don't have to pack up and move somewhere else to make that happen. So that's the other key. It's you have this like great earth to grow, but when it's fully grown and fully established, you can yield and you don't have to go anywhere else as well.